Hey everyone. So today we want to talk about how to schedule a single requirement to multiple resources using universal resource scheduling. There are generally three ways to accomplish this. The first way is to manually drag and drop a requirement on the schedule board to multiple resources. Another way is to use the schedule assistant and simply book a time slot to multiple resources. And a third way is to use resource crews, which will allow you to schedule a requirement once to a crew and have it cascade to all crew members. So the first way to schedule a single requirement to multiple resources is through a drag and drop method from the schedule board. So here I am on the schedule board and I'm accessing it through the Universal Resource Scheduling solution. On the top here I have my resources and their available time slots, and at the bottom here I have a bunch of different requirements in different views. So requirements can be related to any entity, but I happen to be looking at requirements that are related to field service work orders. I can see that there's one requirement here related to work order 333, and it has a duration of 2.5 hours. If I want to schedule this, I simply click it and drag it to one of my resources, such as Edgar. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a booking for 2.5 hours. Now I want to go ahead and schedule that same requirement to other resources. When I go back down to this view here, I see that it's no longer available. This is because this view is filtered to show unscheduled work orders, and once I scheduled it once, the work order became scheduled and was removed from this view. So the way to remedy this is to create a new requirement view. I created one here called All Work Orders, and this is showing all work orders regardless of whether they have a status of scheduled or in progress or unscheduled. And here I can see the same work order 333, and I can go ahead and click it and drag to another resource. And you can see that it's not removed from this view, and I can continue to click it and drag. So based on your business needs, it's very common to create different views here that can allow dispatchers to do different tasks, and one of those being to manually schedule a work order or any requirement multiple times. So let's talk about how to filter these different resource requirement views at the bottom here. What I'm going to go ahead is double click on this requirement and open it up. We can see that this particular requirement had a duration of 2.5 hours. This is what we initially thought we needed for this requirement. But if I head to the scheduling tab here, I can see two other fields, fulfilled duration and remaining duration. Remaining duration is what is left relative to what is expected, which is the 2.5 hours. But fulfilled duration is what we actually booked, which we can see is 3.5 hours because I booked a 2.5 hour job to one resource, and then I created two additional 30-minute jobs for a total of 3.5 hours. So what we can do is we can actually create a different filtered resource requirement view based on these values here that can show or hide resource requirements based on how they are booked. And this is quite simple. So first what I do is I head to Settings, Customizations, and then Customize the System. From here I head to my Entities list, and then I want to go to Resource Requirement. And here I will create a resource requirement view that has the correct filter. Sometimes I want it to filter out jobs that are already scheduled. Sometimes I want it to leave jobs that are already scheduled. After I create my view, I then want to head back to the schedule board, double click on the tab, and what you can do is you can actually find that resource requirement view here, give it a name, and then add it. Doing so will add that view down here and allow you to schedule from it. So there's one other configuration that's worth mentioning, and that is, why is there a discrepancy between the duration of the first booking and the duration of subsequent bookings? The reason for this is that when you first schedule a resource requirement, it's going to give the booking the duration that the requirement requested, which is 2.5 hours. But once you fulfill the 2.5 hours that is requested, all subsequent bookings are given a generic standard booking duration. And this is decided in the booking setup metadata. So if I head to Universal Resource Scheduling and then go to Administration, and then finally enable resource scheduling for entities. Here I'm seeing a list of my schedulable entities. In this particular example, I was scheduling requirements related to work orders, so I'm going to double click on work orders. And here we can see a field that is default booking duration, which is set to 30 minutes. This duration will also apply in scenarios where your requirement has a 0 minutes specified as the duration, so it'll appear on the schedule board as a default 30 minutes. Next, let's show another way to schedule a single requirement to multiple resources from the schedule board. So again, I'm going to find the requirement that I want to schedule multiple times, and in this case it's going to be requirement 222, and I'm going to click it and drag it to Jorge. Now next, I'm going to click and drag and highlight a time slot here. Now depending on your browser, you may have to hit Control and then click and drag, or Shift and then click and drag, or simply just click and drag, and it's going to take up 90 minutes on the schedule board. And then here it's going to ask me to choose a requirement that I want to create, that I want to associate to this booking. And I'm going to search and find the exact same requirement, which in this case is 222, and I'm going to select Add. So you can see here, it creates two different bookings, each related to the same requirement. Now, if I head into this requirement, first I'm going to select the booking. Then from the booking, I can navigate to the resource requirement. And the original requirement asked for 2.5 hours. But I can see that my fulfilled duration is set to 4 hours, which is the summation of each booking duration. Another way to schedule a single requirement multiple times is with the schedule assistant. So here I am back at the schedule board again, and I'm looking at my unscheduled work order requirements. And what I'm going to do is select one of these work orders and choose Find Availability. What this is going to do is trigger the schedule assistant and recommend results. So here the system is recommending a few resources, and we can see at the bottom here that we've booked 0 of 2.5 hours that the requirement is calling for. So I'm going to select the first resource and hit book. And this is going to create a 2.5 hour booking because the first booking is always what the requirement calls for. But you can see that the schedule assistant has not closed out, and I can actually select another resource at a similar time slot to book. And I can go ahead and hit book here. And then if I want to book a third resource, I can, and I'll select book. And I have the option to hit book and exit, which will return me to the schedule board, or I can hit book and continue going. Additionally, right here through the schedule assistant interface, I can not only book multiple people, but I can actually edit the bookings themselves. So if I select on this booking, I can edit the duration by making it smaller. And doing so is going to recalculate my fulfilled versus proposed duration ratio down here. And I'll go ahead and select another booking and reduce its duration as well. And then finally, when I'm done, I'll select Exit Search here. Additionally, if I highlight a work order at the bottom here, or rather a requirement related to a work order, it'll display on the map here, and I can trigger the schedule assistant from the map tooltip view as well. And you can see here it's triggering results. Lastly, if I head back to my requirements view, I can double click a requirement from the bottom, and this will take me to the requirement. From here I can select book in the ribbon, which will also trigger the schedule assistant. And then rather than showing a schedule board view, it's showing a grid view of available resources. I can select a resource and select book, and then simply select another resource and hit book again. And we can see here that I've booked 4 hours for 2. Another easy way of scheduling a single requirement to multiple resources is to use the resource crew functionality. So here on my schedule board, you can see I have a crew called crew1. And this is as simple as creating a new resource with type equal to crew. and adding resource children. So we can see that there are two members of this crew, Jorge and Joseph, and we can see on the schedule board it's grayed out and it mentions that they are part of crew 1 for this specific duration. Now I can go down to my requirements view, and again, requirements can be related to work orders, projects, custom entities, cases, and I'm going to grab this one which happens to be related to a work order, and I'm going to drag it to crew 1. Now doing this will automatically create bookings for everyone else in the crew. So in some ways this is faster than using the schedule assistant or a manual drag and drop. Additionally, I can right click on a crew and choose View Crew Resources in Split View. And in the lower pane, this will show just my crew and the resource children and the bookings. Now when it comes to a single requirement, crews have the benefit of cascading changes. So let's say I selected the crew's booking here and I extended it by another hour. This will cascade changes down to the resource crew members. And we can see here for Jorge and for Joseph, the bookings are extended as well. Now if I double click into a booking, and then if I head over to the scheduling tab, each booking has two fields here, Cascade Crew Changes and Accept Cascade Crew Changes. These fields can be manipulated for the crew header and for the resource crew children to decide how they either accept or cascade changes made from one. So as an example, you can have changes from the crew header automatically cascaded down to all crew members. You can have changes in the crew members cascade to all other crew members, or you can even have some crew members accept changes and other crew members do not. And this will allow you to have crew members showing up at different times if you happen to have that business need. Thanks for watching this video about how to schedule a single requirement to multiple resources. Please stay tuned for more videos.